for Spiritual Living has been in existence. We started in April here, and it's kind of exciting, and wow, I could start dating checks 2016 after this, and it's interesting. And as we've been talking about kind of all month, this time of year, especially with it being dark and we're coming to endings, this is a time of year when we really do think about transitions and what's next. And where are we now? We kind of evaluate, and I think that universally, I think we're kind of hardwired by nature to do that this time of year. And so in American culture, that has manifested as the New Year's resolution. Now, New Year's resolutions are interesting things. How many of you make New Year's resolutions? I do, yeah. How many of you keep New Year's resolutions? I read a statistic that says that only 8% of people keep their New Year's resolutions throughout the year. Only 8%. And 33% are broken before the end of January. And I was sharing this stat with my daughter, and she goes, I didn't expect it to be way higher than that. How many were broken by the end of January? Because the thing about New Year's resolutions is that we tend to make them because we want to fix something that we think is broken. Isn't that usually where the energy of New Year's resolutions comes about? There's something in me that is broken, and I want to fix it, and so I'm going to work harder, do better, eat less, exercise more, spend less, whatever it is, fill in the blank for you, next year, so that I can fix the thing in me that I don't love. What if we just loved ourselves as we are, and then didn't make these resolutions, but rather let our passion guide us into what we wanted to do the next year? That's the reason we break New Year's resolutions, is that there's a thing within us that knows that we are whole, perfect, complete, and we have never been broken. There is something in us that knows that. And so when we set a resolution, so mine has always been weight, always, 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 I'm going to eat better, exercise more, lose 10 pounds, whatever. So when there's something in me that says that I'm not enough as I am, and that I need to do this other thing in order to be enough, that God self within me cries out and says, that's not the truth of who you are. And so we're automatically setting up this discord within our psyche. We're setting up this discord within ourselves, where there's this kind of conscious, rational mind that is conditioned by the world around us and conditioned by the things we see in the media and society that says we're not enough and we have to do something different. And then there's that higher self that's loving us and holding us and saying, you're perfect, just the way you are. And that's why those New Year's resolutions usually feel so bad. It's because by making them, we're giving into that thinks that there's something wrong with us. Well, I want to talk today about purposeful resolutions. I want to talk today about resolutions that we make that bring us closer to our divine purpose, that bring us closer into alignment with who we really are, which is the manifestation of the divine life. That's who we really are. I mean, I don't believe personally that God would create us and put us on this earth because God creates everything perfect except me. I believe that that is a false belief. Fear, false evidence appearing real. And of course, we can look for the evidence that there's something wrong. People will tell you what's wrong with you all the time, right? I mean, how many of you have never, ever, ever had anyone tell you the trouble with you is? Yeah. We hear it a lot. And either we hear it verbally and that explicitly, or we hear it implied. But that's them. That's their stuff. That's their upbringing. That's their baggage. That's everything else. And so then it becomes ours. But when we make purposeful resolutions, we resolve to live in close communion every day with that which is greater than we are, that loves us and guides us and guards us and supports us on the path to our good all the time. No exceptions. So how do we do that? How do we do that? Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to make sure that our New Year's resolution supports our authentic self, supports our authenticity. It's not something that we don't want, but it's something that expresses more of what we do want, more of who we really are. So if you are one of those people that thinks that something's wrong with you and you have to change, then your New Year's resolution is going to be something that you really aren't. familiar with any sort of personality type testing, like Myers-Briggs or Emergenetics or DISC or any of those. I remember the first time, there are lots of them out there, and corporate America uses them to test your strengths, look at where maybe you could, use little supports. I remember the first time I took a Myers-Briggs test. It was so liberating, because what I found is that I'm just an ENFP. I'm not overly sensitive, I'm not a procrastinator, I'm not lazy, I'm not any of these things. I am just the quintessential ENFP. However, I was raised by parents who had exactly the opposite personality type of me. So everything I valued, they didn't. So my sensitive, emotional, free spirit was seen as, wimpy and toughen up and you're too sensitive and don't take it personally. So there was something wrong with me, I thought. Well, once I learned that there was nothing wrong with me, that's just who I am, and it's beautiful because we need everybody's contribution to make this world work. It was so liberating. But for years, I made New Year's resolutions about how I was going to be less sensitive. I was going to be less touchy. I wasn't going to take things, as deep. I was going to feel things as deeply. I was going to just keep everything on the surface. That doesn't serve me in the long run because it's not who I am. It served the needs of people who lived with me, who were uncomfortable with who I was, but it didn't serve me. There's a great program, it's about finance. It's called Financial Peace by a man named Dave Ramsey. Some of you may have heard of it. I love him. He says, we spend all of our time spending money we don't have on things we don't want to impress people we don't like. And I think that a lot of the spirit of New Year's resolutions comes from that. We want to be better so that we have stuff that we don't really need to impress people we don't really like, because somehow that'll make us okay. But when we really make purposeful resolutions, we make them from our heart. We make them to be more of who we are, not change who we are. We make them to be more an expression of the divine, rather than squelching that spark within us. There's a story by a man named Bob Trask. He's a motivational speaker and coach up in the Seattle area. He's got a foundation called the Eris Foundation. And he tells this great story about how when he was 19 years old, he had dropped out of high school and he became a paramedic when he was 17, and money was always tight. He was always struggling for money as a paramedic, and so he wanted to make the big bucks. And he, at the time, he's probably older than I am. He's in his late 50s, early 60s. So at the time, it was Peter Frampton. He saw Peter Frampton, the guitar player. Those of you of a certain age will remember Peter Frampton. You guys over there, anyway, but they remember you too, so I don't know either. But anyway, he remembered Peter Frampton, and he saw how Peter Frampton, he read some interview with him about how he got all these girls, and he drove this great car, and he's like, that's it. That's the answer to my problems. I'm going to become a singer. So he heard from some Dale Carnegie course that if you have a goal, tell everyone about the goal. So that's what he was going to do. So he goes out and he starts telling everyone, I'm going to become a singer. I'm going to become a singer. I'm going to become a singer. And everyone's like, oh, good for you, Bob. Whatever, kind of, they don't take him too seriously. And so, but he's going to do it because that's going to be the ticket for him to get out of poverty and get the girls and get the car and get the money and get everything else. So he's telling his family, he tells his mom and dad, and they're like, oh, that's nice, honey, whatever, and he tells his brother, and his brother's like, oh, great. And then he tells his sister, and his sister goes, she's cooking at the time, she's peeling potatoes, and he's standing in the kitchen, he goes, so I'm going to be a singer. And she goes, oh, that's great, so sing. He goes, what? She goes, so sing. I can't sing. She's like, okay, well, if you're going to be a singer, you better learn to sing. And that's when he realized that he only wanted to be a singer to get the stuff. He didn't know how to sing. He didn't want to sing. He didn't want to learn how to sing. But he liked what he thought that lifestyle represented. That is not a purposeful resolution. That's trying to fix something we think is broken in us. So when we make purposeful resolutions, we find who we really are, and we want to do more of that. We make sure we do more of that. We enhance what we have, rather than fix what we don't. So it supports our authenticity, our authentic selves. The second thing that has to happen when we make purposeful resolutions is they have to come from vision. They have to come from a long-term vision. Resolutions tend to be quick fixes. by design. You know, I think that's why weight is such an issue in January, because everybody eats too much over the holidays, and then everybody feels bad, and so they want to lose weight really fast, and so let's just, you know, go on Jenny Craig Weight Watch. I mean, have you seen on TV how many of these have been on lately? Wait until January 1st. They'll be bombarding us with it. But when you create a purposeful resolution, it comes from a vision that's the long-term vision of your life. It's not something that just gets done today or even next month, but it's a new way of showing up in the world. And it's a new way of showing up in the world that supports what we really want. So what that, of course, means is that we have to have a vision for our life. And I think that that's a challenge for many of us, because I think that we just show up to life and we react to it. So a situation presents ourselves and then we take action to correct it, or a situation presents itself and we take action to go forward on it. But we don't purposefully create what we want. We kind of let life happen and then we adapt. But the way life works the best is when we set the vision and we set all the intermediate steps, and then we go forward toward it rather than just reacting. And yes, sometimes we have to adapt, sometimes things happen. Cars get crashed, jobs get lost, relationships end, and we have to adapt. But when we have the vision, those things just become a little bump in the road, rather than some life-changing or life-altering event. In May of 1961, John F. Kennedy set this big vision for the United States. He said we were going to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade, of the 1960s. Now, nobody believed in this vision, because this was clearly impossible. The Soviets were beating the United States in the space race. There was no funding available. Congress wasn't behind it. NASA just barely existed at the time. And so this was a ridiculous thing, and everyone chalked it up as political rhetoric. But by casting the vision, Kennedy planted it in the consciousness of the American people. Not only that, not only did he plant it in consciousness, he nurtured it and supported it. NASA had all sorts of, well, now, you know, they're like, I can do more on my iPhone than what NASA could do in 1961. But back then, they were these high-tech pictures of the moon that they blew up, and they posted them all over NASA. Anytime anyone walked down any corridor in the NASA building, there was a picture of the moon at the end of the hallway. So they were going toward the moon wherever they went. Every bit of propaganda that came out about this was about how we were going to put a man on the moon, and the possibility of it, the fact that we were going to do it. This isn't just some pie-in-the-sky promise, but we were going to do it. And every single thing that NASA did went toward that. There was no reactiveness. They created technology. They found new ways to use the technology they had in order to achieve this vision cast by Kennedy. And so, of course, in 1969, we had a man on the moon by the end of the decade. We can do this in our own lives, but we have to know what we're going after. We have to shoot for the moon. I thought that was actually really clever. I was really proud of that myself. Okay. We have to go for that big thing. It's not enough to just react. I'll just get up and go to work again today, and, you know, maybe next month I'll be able to take a vacation, and, you know, then, you know, I'm content. Maybe my, you know, kids will come home for Christmas, or my grandkids, or that's just reacting. There's something in us that we want to do. The reason that many of us get the belief we're broken is that there's something calling us that we're not doing because we don't believe we can. And so every time we show up and we don't do the thing that God is calling us to do, it creates more of that discomfort that I was talking about earlier, that there's something wrong here. There's nothing wrong here. It's just that we've never been told in the right way that we can be, do, and have anything we want. We just have to have the vision. We have to have it clearly. And then we have to know that it's not a quick thing. It's going to take steps. It's going to be a long-term thing. And we have to stay with it. We can adjust and we can adapt. But we have to go from vision, not from this place of brokenness. And then the last thing is that when we make a purposeful resolution, it should feel exciting. It should feel exciting. It should be that giddy sort of, oh my goodness, exciting. How many of you have ever started a new exercise regimen and felt that way? You guys are the ones who stuck with it, probably. Because most people I talk to that say, oh, this year for my New Year's resolution, I'm going to start going to the gym, they say it like they're going to have a root canal, or something. It's not exciting. But a purposeful resolution is when we get to do what we want. Now, I think that a lot of us have been told that we can't do what we want because that's just whatever. Wrong, lazy, bad, nobody's going to pay you for that, your talents don't have value, whatever, fill in the blank. And if you haven't had that experience, then great, that's good for you, because I think about 90%, I read somewhere, 90% of Americans don't believe their dreams are possible. So, our dreams are possible. And we know that they're the right dreams when they feel exciting. That's how that's supporting our authenticity, that's how we identify it. We know it's our authentic dream when we are giddy. If we're not giddy, it's not ours. I remember once a while back I was writing out my vision statement of what I wanted, and it was all, I just started my own business, and it was a marketing firm, and it was all about the marketing firm and how we were going to have $1 million in business, and we were going to have an office in one of those big office buildings in downtown Denver, and I was going to have this huge staff. And I remember clearly, this was in 2005, 10 years ago, as I was writing the resolution, I was like kind of getting queasy, like, ugh. This feels like a lot of work. I don't really want to do this. But who wouldn't want that resolution, right? Wouldn't everyone want to own a big, successful business with all this No. It didn't feel exciting. That wasn't my resolution. It wasn't a bad resolution for someone else. There are obviously people who own multi-million-dollar ad agencies in downtown Denver. It's a perfect goal for them, not for me. So it needs to feel exciting. So in 1989, I set a New Year's resolution, I remember it clearly, that felt really exciting. And it seemed frivolous at the time. It seemed frivolous. But we can't judge what feels exciting. We shouldn't judge it. We shouldn't. I just use the should word on y'all. We should not judge what feels good to us. If it feels exciting, it feels exciting. There's no right or wrong here. So in 1989, I was married to my first husband, and we had gotten our first jobs out of college. And we found a cartoon in the newspaper, and it had two people about our age, 20-something, that said, they lied to us. These aren't careers, they're just jobs with better paychecks. And that was kind of how we felt about our lives. And we both really wanted to travel. I didn't fit in the corporate America mold, and yet I was in this very corporate advertising job. And we didn't, things just didn't feel right to us. So we just bought 2 cars, and our car payments ended in March of 1992. This is 1989, or December of 88, actually. So our car payments ended, and we said, you know what? Let's just travel. Let's just quit our jobs and buy a motorhome, and we'll just travel for 6 months before we have kids and buy a house and settle down and do all of that. And so we said, but we couldn't do it that year, 1989, because we had 2 car payments, and we weren't ready to sell the cars. So our last car payment was in March of 92. So that was our resolutions that we were going to do it. And at first it didn't feel very real to us. Yeah, it sounded like fun, but didn't feel very real. But every step of the way, we did things that made it feel more real. So for 3.5 years, every time we went to Costco or Sam's Club, we bought extra toilet paper. So that we would have toilet paper for we called it the adventure, so that we wouldn't have to spend money on the adventure for toilet paper, because toilet paper never goes bad, so we could store it for all those years and have, so this sounds ridiculous, but every time we bought another, thing of toilet paper, we were like, where can they really go on this? Sometime in 1991, I sat down, remember, this is pre-internet everything, and wrote letters to every tourism bureau of every state across America and had them mail me their brochures. And then we got one of those big accordion files, and we filed every state's tourism information alphabetically, so that we had them all. And periodically we'd go through and we'd open up the brochures and we'd be like, oh my God, look at what we can see in Birmingham, Alabama. We were so excited. And people told us we were crazy. We both had pretty good paying corporate sort of jobs. And of course, every year from 1989 to 1992, we made more money, and we made more money, and we had more responsibility, and our titles got bigger. I was offered the job of vice president of my ad agency at age 26, 1 month before I knew I was leaving. So I turned it down because that's when I had to tell them I was leaving. So this all got bigger and bigger, and it made it harder and harder to go. But you know what? Staying didn't feel exciting. It didn't feel like it was ours to do. On a spreadsheet, did it make perfect sense? Oh, it made perfect sense for us to have stayed at home and kept in our jobs and stayed on our career path and continued to contribute to the 401k. But it didn't feel that passion, that excitement. And so we did it. We left in March 31st, 1992, and we got back October 12th, and we saw 48 continental states, 7 provinces of Canada, and we had lunch in Tijuana so we could say we went to Mexico. So it was wonderful. But it was a purposeful resolution. It wasn't a quick fix. There was nothing broken. We just were really called to do this. We really wanted to travel. So as we're looking at this time of year and we're thinking about making resolutions, let's make sure that they are purposeful. Let's make sure that they're purposeful resolutions. Let's make sure that we can get to a place through spiritual practice, through meditation, through prayer, through contemplation, whatever, hiking, whatever it is for you, that we fall in love with ourselves so that we know there's nothing broken. There's nothing broken. We are made in the image and likeness of the divine. There's nothing wrong here. So when we make the resolution, let's not do it from fixing something that's wrong, but let's do it from an authentic place that supports who we are, enhances our gifts, allows us to share them in greater and deeper ways, supports our authenticity so that we can contribute to the world in a way that no one else can. Because we are all unique, and no one else has exactly the gift we have to give. And so if we go around trying to give someone else's gift because we think that's what we're supposed to do, because society tells us that we're just supposed to go do that gift, we're missing out and we're depriving the world of our gift. So as you go through this time of year, make sure that whatever you do next supports your authenticity. Make sure it comes from your vision. If you don't have a personal vision for your life, take the time to get one. That, for me, has been my biggest challenge. What do I really want to be when I grow up? You know, it changes about once a week. So what do I really want to be? And from that, everything else falls into place. So make sure it's driven by vision. And then, how do you know that it's a real vision? Because we have a lot of voices in our head, right? So how do we know that the vision is really my vision and not, you know, my mom's vision or old teacher's vision or something that someone told me I was supposed to do? Well, that's where you go to step 3 and that's the litmus test. It should feel exciting. And if you set a grand vision and it doesn't feel exciting, it's not your vision. Go back to the drawing board and redo. But it should feel exciting. And when you get to that place where you can just know that you're going forward and it's yours, then that is when you got a purposeful resolution. So, how many of you are going to sit down on New Year's Eve now and write New Year's resolutions? Good, exactly the same number that we quoted you before. Perfect. Well, when you do, or if you don't, make sure that everything we do, whether it's in the new year or any time of year, comes from this place of purposeful resolution. Let's pray. So we take that moment, this sacred now, to feel within and recognize the presence of that one divine life, the presence of that spirit within us, that divine love, that inner friend, that loving, omnipotent energy that is truly the divine. Because as we recognize that that lives in us, as we recognize and practice courting that presence and hearing that presence and unifying that presence, that we become more and more assured of our own success. We become more and more assured of the resolution for our lives, this year, any year. So I know for each and every person here that there is that divine spark. There is that piece of the one that manifests as the many. And that we are held together in this divine consciousness of love and light that permeates through all of us. And so as we now move to that place where the days get longer and we begin thinking about the coming year, I know for each one of us, that we do it with a renewed sense of who we are. And that's all we need. When we know ourselves, we know God. And so I recognize for each person that we take the time, the energy, the effort, and the peace to know ourselves. We move into this week and this next year with a renewed sense of who we really are. We move into this next week purposeful of what we are here to do. We move into this time of renewal with a renewed sense that we are one with the divine and that our only purpose is to express and experience more joy. And we do whatever we need to do to fulfill that. And so recognizing for each person here that we go out into the blessings that are this life, the blessings that each one of us are to the world. We go forward here with a renewed sense of purpose, a renewed sense of joy, a renewed sense of upliftment. We are truly blessed. So I give grateful thanks for this divine life, this divine love, this divine spirit that is the truth of who each one of us is. And so from this place of gratitude, I just release these words. I know that all is well for each of us because all is truly well in every moment. It can be no other way. And so I know for each of us that we recognize that as we go into this final week of 2015. All is well. All is well. All is well. And we let it be so. And please join me in saying, and so it is.